Okay, let's see how can we solve these two equations. And you may notice this already. They look pretty similar, right? Except for the fact that the powers here are different than that one. And let's look at this one first. This is x squared minus 3x is equal to 4. This is just a regular quadratic equation, right? And we can solve this by factoring. So let's go ahead, make one side equal to 0. I will minus 4 on both sides so that they cancel. And this way, we can get x squared minus 3x minus 4, and this is equal to the 0 that we need to have. And I'm going to factor this out, but let me show you guys the tic-tac-toe method. So I'm going to write this down. I know many of you guys can tell me the answer already, but it's for a good purpose, okay? I'm just going to factor it. X times x will give us the x squared. And to get negative 4, I'm going to use negative 4 and 1, because we see x times 1 is x, and negative 4 times x is negative 4x. When you combine these two terms together, we do end up with negative 3x. So we know we got the correct combination. And the factoring for this is x minus 4 times x plus 1. And we still have this equals to 0. And we continue, right? We make this x minus 4 equals to 0. And we also make that x plus 1 equals to 0. For the first one, I can just add 4 on both sides so that they cancel. And we have x is equal to 4. And the second one, we can just minus 1 on both sides. This way, we get x by itself, and this is equal to negative 1. And therefore, we have our two answers right here. Okay, now how can we solve this equation? This and that are very similar, right? And in fact, let me just review some vocabularies with you guys. This right here is a quadratic equation because the degree right here is 2. That's the highest power that we have. And for this equation, this is not really a quadratic equation because the degree right here that we have is 4. This is the highest power that we have, right? This is not a quadratic equation, but this is what we call the equation in the quadratic form. So what does that mean? Whenever we have an equation in the quadratic form, meaning this is similar to that, and it also tells us that we can just solve this equation with the same method. We can factor it with the tic-tac-toe method. And let me put this in action for you guys. I'm just going to subtract 4 on both sides, like exactly how I did it over there. And you see we have x to the 4th power minus 3x squared and then minus 4, and this is equal to 0. This is not a quadratic equation, but this is an equation in the quadratic form. And we can solve this by factoring with the tic-tac-toe method. I'm just going to go ahead and factor this for you guys. And this is the reason why I put on tic-tac-toe right over there, to just emphasize we can do the same right here as well. But to get x to the 4th power, you have to be sure you balance the power. We are going to use x squared times x squared. So we have x squared here, x squared here. And another hint is that you see this is x to the 4th power, this is x squared. The power right here should be double of this, then that's the equation in the quadratic form. And to get negative 4, I'm going to use negative 4 and positive 1. And we know this is going to work because x squared times 1 is positive x squared. Negative 4 times x squared is negative 4x squared. Combine these two terms together, we get negative 3, and the x squared stays the same. So we know we did it right. The factoring for this is x squared minus 4, that's the first one, times the other one is x squared plus 1. And we still have this equals to 0. And we go ahead and do the same thing, right? We make this x squared minus 4 equals to 0. And we also make that x squared plus 1 equals to 0. And we go ahead, try to solve this equation. I will do so by add a 4 on both sides. Cancel, cancel. And then we have x squared equals to 0 plus 4 is 4. And let's finish this first. X squared is equal to 4. How can I get x by itself? We can just take the square root on both sides and be sure you apply the plus minus here. Square root cancel, and we have x is equal to plus minus, and we know square root of 4 is just a 2. So right here, we have two answers, namely 2 and also negative 2. two answers right here. And then for this one, I'm just going to subtract 1 on both sides. Cancel, cancel. And then I get x squared equals to 0 minus 1 is negative 1. Once again, I'm just going to take the square root on both sides. And be sure you have the plus minus. Square root cancel. And we have x by itself. And this is equal to, let's put on a plus minus. We have square root of negative 1. Can we do that? Yes and no, right? Yes, if we have the complex number, which we do, okay? So, square root of negative 1 is I. If we haven't covered the complex numbers yet, we'll just say this is not possible, but we did. So, square root of negative 1, that's the I. And altogether, we have 4 answers. Positive 2, negative 2, positive I, negative I. So, this right here is it. Okay, let's look at another example. Here, this equation is also in the quadratic form. How do we know? Well, we see the power right here is 2/3 and the power right here is 1/3. This is twice as much as that, right? And the good thing is that whenever we have the equation in the quadratic form, we can solve this by the tic-tac-toe factoring. Be sure one side is 0, it is, so we can get to work. I'm just going to show you guys we can do the tic-tac-toe factoring right here. And we have to do this carefully. That's all. We have to ask ourselves, what times what will give us x to the 2/3 power? And the answer to that is x to the 1/3 times x to the 1/3. So let me put that down right here for you guys. And how do we know it is x to the 1/3? Another hint is that, look at the middle term. You must have the x to the 1/3 right here, so that when you pair things up, this right here will be the same as that, right? And now, if you look at negative 6, what times what will give us negative 6? I'm going to use negative 3 and positive 2. Is this correct? Let's see. So x to the 1/3 times 2 is 2x to the 1/3. And then negative 3 times x to the 1/3, this is negative 3x to the 1/3. They are like terms, right? And negative 3 combined with 2, we get negative 1. So we know we did it right. So the factoring for this, it's going to be x to the 1/3 minus 3 times x to the 1/3 plus 2. And this is equal to 0. And we can just continue this, right? So I will make the first equation, x to the 1/3 minus 3 equals to 0. And then we can get the second equation right here, x to the 1/3 plus 2 equals to 0. I'm going to add 3 on both sides here. So we have x to the 1/3, give us positive 3. And then how can we solve for x right here? This is x to the 1/3 power. This is the same as cube root of x, right? But either way, how you want to look at it, we are just going to take this and raise both sides to the 3rd power. So that 3 and 1/3 will cancel out. And we have x. This is equal to 3 to the 3rd power, 3 times 3 times 3. We have 27. And that's the first answer. X is equal to 27. And for the other one, I'm going to subtract 2 on both sides. So we're looking at this as x to the 1/3. And this is equal to negative 2. Do the same business. I'm going to take this and raise both sides to the 3rd power so that they cancel, and we get x is equal to negative 2 to the 3rd power means negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2. At the end, we have negative 8. So 2 answers, 27, and the other one is negative 8. That's it. Here's another one, and even though this equation is just a quadratic equation, and usually we'll multiply this out and we'll distribute, right? However, don't do it like that, because notice that we have the 4x minus 1, and this is also 4x minus 1. I will show you guys with a different approach, because as I told you guys, in this video, I will go over on how to solve an equation in the quadratic form. Namely, we can do this by the tic-tac-toe factoring as well. We'll look at this as 1, 2, 3, 3 terms. And you see the right-hand side is 0 already. Let's go ahead and do the tic-tac-toe factoring. So I will draw the tic-tac-toe boxes like this, and I will factor this out. Right here, we have 4x minus 1 to the 2nd power. What times 1 will give us that? Well, I'm just going to have the base, which is the 4x minus 1 twice. That's it, right? 4x minus 1 times 4x minus 1. Of course, it will give us 4x minus 1, and then you square that. And now let's look at positive 14. What and what can we use? I'm going to use negative 7 and negative 2. Negative 7 and negative 2. Is this correct? Let's see. I'm going to put this times that. Negative 2 times this. I'm not going to distribute anything. I'm just going to put it down, which it will be negative 2 times the parentheses with 4x minus 1. And this times that, right? So we will have negative 7 times 4x minus 1. And you see, this and that, they are the same term, right? And negative 7 combined with negative 2, we have negative 9. So once again, we did it right. And this is going to be a factoring. Be careful with this. Right here, once again, we look at this across for the factoring. So we put this down, which the first part is 4x minus 1, right? And then for this right here, it's minus 7. Then just put this down in black. 4x minus 1, and then this is minus 7. And for the second factoring right here, we have this, which is 4x minus 1, and then we have the minus 2 after that. It's slightly unusual because we have 3 things in each parentheses, but this is just how it is, because originally this right here, we have 2 terms already. So these are the factors, and we have this is equal to 0. As usual, I will put this down and set it equal to 0. I'll put this down and make it equal to 0. Let's look at the first one. 4x minus 1 minus 7 is equal to 0. And the second one is going to be 4x minus 1 minus 2 equals to 0. So let's do this quickly. Minus 1 minus 7 is minus 8. So we have 4x minus 8 equals to 0. Let me add 8 on both sides so that they cancel. And then we will have 4x is equal to 0 plus 8. Of course, it's 8. And then we divide both sides by 4 so that we get the x by itself. First answer, x is equal to 8 divided by 4. We have 2. And for this one, minus 1 minus 2 is minus 3. So we have 4x minus 3 equals to 0. And we will add 3 on both sides. And then we will have 4x equals to 0 plus 3 is just 3. At the end, we divide it by 4 on both sides. So another answer, x is equal to 3 over 4. So these right here are the answers. And this is how you take care of an equation in a quadratic form.
Black pen, red pen. Yay!
Yay!